Keep on the sunny side, always on the sunny side. Keep on the sunny side of life. It will help us every day, it will brighten all the way. If you keep on the sunny side of life.
I need thee, oh, I need thee, my precious Lord, I need thee. Oh, come to me, my Savior, I come to thee. Boy, doesn't that seem like that's what we're really all about these days? I need thee every hour. I need thee. Oh, I need thee. You know, this midweek message, and in part the message this weekend's message, is about God's call in your life. God's call defines your purpose, and it fills your life. It fulfills that purpose and fills your life with meaning. This is very, very important. We live in an age where people are dying for lack of meaning. Millions are pulled into destructive causes, deceptive cults, both religious and political cults. And why are people throwing their lives away, throwing their passion, throwing their time and faith into movements that are so opposite of the life and the teachings of Jesus Christ? It's confusing. Many of you wonder, why do others seem to lose themselves in the pursuit of material possessions and that kind of obsession with that? You know, even religious people, even church-going people, drawn into this empty pursuit of meaning in status or in more things. You know, Jesus was the one that said, he said to them in Luke chapter 12, verse 15, beware, watch out for this. Beware, be on your guard against every form of greed. For not even when one has an abundance does his life consist of his possessions. And yet you would think many people, many religious people don't even see that in Scripture. Jesus clearly forbids this kind of way of thinking or this kind of way of living, that my life consists of what I have. And many are deceived and end up empty, and they have to anesthetize themselves. They end up in addictions to fill what their idol of things could not give them. But they're really deep down in every human heart, what we're looking for is peace, and joy, love. You know, it's an amazing thing what you can go through if you can really see its meaning. Its meaning that is transcendent. Jesus calls us to have a full and meaningful life. As the old Baptist tract used to say, a full and meaningful life is really what the gospel is offering. Jesus said in John 10:10, he said, the thief comes only to steal and to kill and to destroy. I came that they might have life, Zoe life, meaningful life, and have it abundantly. So how is it that we miss this meaningful life that he wants us to have? Why is that song of the gospel, the song of Christ, that song that he called us to sing, how is it altered so much? How do the lyrics get changed to where we end up speaking and singing another gospel, another spirit, another Christ, and we easily listen to it without considering it? Well, it's because we haven't heard the original song in a long time. Maybe it's been altered so much and so gradually that so many things, little flourishes and little ads and little instrumentations, that we don't recognize that the essential meaning and message of the song has been changed. You have to hear the original song. You need to hear the original lyrics from Christ again, of that beautiful melody that he gave us in the gospel. Christ called all of us, all you and I, every one of us that have followed him, to do two things. That's what the call is. Here you see it in Mark. It says in Mark chapter 3:13 and 14, and he went up on the mountain and he summoned those whom he himself wanted, and they came to him. And he appointed 12 so that they would be with him, and that he could send them out to preach. In this, Jesus essentially kind of lays out what he really, this kind of what he has in mind. And these are given in order of importance. He calls them to be with him. To be with him is the first thing. Everything begins and ends and continues all the way through from your loving and intentional nearness to Christ, to be with him. You are called into a relationship, not a religion. You are called to Christ, not church. You are called to holy love, not a religious hobby. Then he appointed 12 so that they would be with him, and that he could send them out to preach. If you're not with him, if you're not close to him, if you're not walking intimately with him, nothing you do will really matter. I mean, Jesus said it. He said it so clearly. He said, I am the vine, you are the branches. He who abides in me and I in him bears much fruit. For apart from me, you can do nothing. All this stuff, all this activity, all these opinions, all this theology that we all get wrapped up in, all these little petty controversies about one thing or the other. If you're not abiding in him, you'll produce nothing. What does that mean, to be with him, to abide in him? It means to inwardly rely on him. Or as Brother Lawrence in the 13th century said, to practice the presence of God, to live in an awareness of his presence, and also in an awareness of his presence of you. It means that you're walking by faith in him. It starts oftentimes, it starts at the very beginning with confession. I need you. Please forgive me. I was wrong. It goes on, and that confession leads us into communion with him, fellowship with him. That we are communing with him. The sin and the barriers that were between us are removed. And now we're in communion with him. We're walking in fellowship with him. There is much to say about the fellowship that we have with Christ. As Paul said, to be found in him, that I might know him and be found in him, not having a righteousness of my own. To share in the fellowship with Christ. But you know what Paul says in Philippians 3:10, the fellowship of his sufferings. Oftentimes we want the power in our life, but not the fellowship that comes in suffering with him. What does that mean, being in him and fellowshipping with him? And sometimes fellowshipping involves suffering for the love of Christ. You don't want to suffer. I don't either. And I especially don't want to suffer for being stubborn or selfish or just plain stupid. If we're going to suffer, we want to suffer because we did it for Christ, for righteousness' sake. And that communion that we share, that fellowship that we share with him, it leads to conversation. Like right now, this conversation, moment by moment, where you're talking to the Lord as you're listening to this message, or as I'm speaking it. I'm communing and I'm having a conversation with him moment by moment, what Oswald Chambers called the inward gaze. Colossians 3:2 talks about it, and he says, set your mind on the things above, not on the things of the earth. You know, in these confusing times and sometimes discouraging times, we can not sure how to grapple with the dark times that we find ourselves in. The poem that was written wonderfully wraps it up and expresses it. So I go on not knowing. I feel like that. So much of what's happening right now, I go on not knowing. But let me read the poem. So I go on not knowing. I would not, if I might. I would rather walk in the darkness with God than go alone in the light. I would rather walk with him by faith than walk alone by light. You see, to be with him is the first thing he wants. That's the first call. He called them to be with him. But also the second thing is to proclaim him. He said he could send them out to preach. The word preach literally means to proclaim. You know, we are not to preach the culture or our national agenda. We're not to preach that. We are to preach Christ and him crucified. To remind of the love, to remind of the life, remind of the kind of expression of him, to be like him in all that we do, the kind of life that he wants us to live. We proclaim him. You know, as you are walking with him, as you are walking and abiding with him, he guides you. He compels your words and your actions. Like 1 Peter 2:9 says, but you are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people for God's own possession, so that you may proclaim the excellencies of him who called you out of darkness into his marvelous light. That's what you do. You proclaim the excellencies of him. It's Christ that changes lives. And this is why you are here. This is why you're still on earth. This is what God's purpose for 2022 is for you and for every year after. This is how your life is filled with meaning, to be with him and to proclaim him. Now I want to encourage you, take the time to be with him today. Maybe you can, when you shut this off, take a few minutes to be quiet. Maybe you need to start with confession. Maybe it's been a while since you've really come to him and said, Lord, I need to get honest with you. Search me, O God, and know my heart, and see if there is any hurtful way in me. Confession. But if you confess your sin, he is faithful and righteous to forgive your sin and cleanse you from all unrighteousness. And if we walk in the light as he is in the light, we have fellowship with one another, and his blood cleanses us from all sin. Start. Take time to be with him with confession. And then communion. Tell him all about your problems. Cast your burdens upon him, for he cares for you. And then continue the conversation. Don't just stop after a time of prayer, but continue the conversation as you go. Conversation of praise. Conversation of thanks. This is what we're called to do. And when things come up, when you step off, you come back and you confess again. This is what we're called to. And this weekend, I'm going to teach, as I've been teaching, verse by verse through the book of Luke for some time now, what I actually started back before we had the pandemic, for months and months before that. Now we're back in Luke. And if you want to come, I want to talk to you about how Jesus calls you, how he calls you. And if you want to come in person, for those in-person services, we have one at 8 o'clock and an outdoor service at 9:30. and 11 o'clock service. We will do all we can to make it as safe as possible. As a matter of fact, somebody donated us some medical grade masks, and maybe you don't have one of those, but you may want one of those, and we'll give you even one of those. We'll do what we can for an in-person service to make it as safe as possible. And I want to encourage you, if you are at a place where your health is strong enough where you can do that, we want you to be there. We take that as our responsibility to make it as safe as we can, do our part. But if you want to watch online, that's fine too. But let me ask you, and I understand there's some of you that say, look, I'm just not feeling like I can do that right now. And I understand. But let us know by responding and sharing the video or maybe the audio with some friends of yours. That can be part of your way of proclaiming him to others. And let us know that you're connecting with that. And let us know if you want to get involved in maybe another group. I know these times will pass, but we don't want to walk through them. We don't want to walk through them without him, because he's called you to, first of all, number one, be with him, and then to proclaim. I can't wait to see you or hear from you. God bless you.